Well, everyone, thank you for being here today, and I'm extremely thrilled and pleased that we have Miss Stephanie Meyer with us. She is the New York Times bestselling author for Twilight, New Moon, which we all have read, and we know that both of these books have kind of created a phenomenon within the young adult market. But I think it's also good to note that it's not only within young adult, but I think there's also an adult crossover appeal. And I think when you look at who we have here today, you know, we have a range from 14 to 34, which I think really kind of covers your fan base. So I'd like to kind of start out there and say, were you surprised writing your first novel, and you're writing for young adults, you're writing for teens, but to look and see that there was that adult crossover appeal, that there were so many fans that are like 20 and up?
I wasn't really writing, thinking, I'm writing a YA novel. I'm going to think about what a 16-year-old wants to read, and I'll write that. I was writing it just for me. I wasn't going to show anyone this. And I was 29 at the time. So to me, it seems really natural that I have this little group of 30-somethings, you know, and that just seems, of course, because that's who I was really writing it for.
Yeah.
I don't think high school is something that you ever really get over, unfortunately. I mean, some ways it's good, some ways it's not, but that's something everyone can go back to really easily in their heads.
I have a question about the writing of Twilight. You said that you had a dream that was the meadow scene. And how did the whole story in the world of Twilight evolve from around that? Like, where did the idea of vampires and, you know, Bella and Edward and their story develop from that?
See, and I wish I could answer that question better, because it'd be nice to say this is how it works, but I don't know why I was dreaming about vampires, because I certainly hadn't read or watched anything about them. And then I didn't know where the story was going. I didn't have an outline. I sat down, I wrote out that scene that just had captured I couldn't think about anything else. You know, here was this guy and he was in love with her, but he wanted to kill her, and I was just so caught up in that. And then when I finished that scene, and I was just gonna write it so I wouldn't forget it, then I was like, okay, but what would have happened next? And how would they have gone about their lives from that point on? And I just started writing, and I didn't know what I was going to write next. It wasn't like I said, and I'm gonna get to this scene, and then I'll get to this one. No, I was just writing it, and just kind of came at the time, which is so much fun, but just never happens again. That's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
So I've always been curious, what was your life like before Twilight ever came to your dream world?
It was a lot the same as it is now, and then completely different. It kind of changes, because some days I'm doing this, and then other days it's just the same. I'm at home with my kids like usual. When I wrote Twilight, just before that, I was, you know, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have my 3 little boys. We were potty training, which was not fun. And everything was really normal. I was not thinking, gosh, I wish I could write a book, or I really wish that I could sit down and start a new career. It was not the way my mind was working. And so it really was a black and white. One day I was not a writer, the next day I was, which is not the way it usually works. And I dug back through some of my old journals and stuff. I found one place in 2nd grade, 3rd choice on my list of things I wanted to be when I grew up. It was ballet dancer, which didn't happen, paleontologist, and then writer. And so it never was a first place priority for me. I think it's funny how it just, you know, obviously I must have been wanting that outlet, because once I found it, it was so much fun. Everything revolved around that. I can't go see a movie because it's like 3 hours away from my computer. I can't do that. And so it's such a huge part of my life. It's hard to imagine my life without it now. But back then, it was just, I mean, I scrapbooked. There wasn't a lot. I had a lot more free time, I think. Mostly it was just kids. 3 kids are quite a career.
Yeah, I bet.
How did Twilight become from being your secret that only you and your sister were going to read to being published?
There were kind of 2 factors. One was the shock of having finished what I then had to realize was an actual book. I mean, I didn't know how Word pages translate into actual pages, but this was pretty long. You know, I knew it was a good size thing, and I had finished it. It was complete, and I've never finished anything in my life. I was like, I wrote a whole book. And then the other thing was my sister, who, if she had lived in Arizona, probably would have physically kicked me. She's like, you have to do it. Just send it out to someone. And then I started looking at it. It's hard. You have to go through agents, and you have to send out these horrible queries that are just a nightmare to try and summarize. I dare anyone to summarize Twilight in 10 sentences and not make it sound like a bad episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's impossible. And so that was really hard, but I still don't know where I got the courage from, because it's not my usual thing. I think I was meant to be doing this, and so I had a little extra help because it's not my usual personality at all.